Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the San Martin SN0144-GL Jian Zhan. This watch is available from sanmartinwatches.com for $305, which is €282. So firstly, let's look at the hard shell travel case that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a hard shell travel case, which is housed inside this outer cardboard box. So I'll remove it and show it to you. So this is the hard shell travel case, and on the lid it's embossed with a San Martin hex emblem to a good standard. Nice green tone to the vinyl or PU leather, which has a grained finish to it, and we have a zip securing the lid to the base. So I'll show you the interior. The interior is upholstered with a dark green velour fabric to a good standard, and in the base the watch sits on a padded pillow cushion, which is also green velour fabric upholstered to a good standard. So good quality hard shell travel case, and San Martin deserve credit here because they could have taken the less expensive default option of a plastic or cardboard watch box at this price point in the low tier, €282, but this hard shell travel case is good quality. It's also aesthetically pleasing and I like it. With regards to the items that come with the watch, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Miyota caliber 9015 automatic. This is the plastic warranty card that comes with the watch. We have the San Martin hex emblem on one side, and on the reverse it details the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty, date of purchase, reference number, and it's stamped with San Martin Watch Company. Now I want to give due credit to San Martin here because often low-tier Chinese brands only cover their watches with 12 months international warranties. To get 2 years of international warranty is very good, and San Martin deserve full credit for that. This is the plastic tag that comes with the watch. It has San Martin's hex emblem and also the San Martin text logo on both sides, as you can see. And one also gets this resealable bag, which has 2 standard stainless steel spring bars, and these are spares for the 2 standard spring bars used in the bracelet on the head of the piece. And one also gets this stainless steel spring bar tool. Now, I want to give due credit to San Martin here because often spring bar tools are made from mild steel, which is nickel plated, and the problem is the nickel plating wears off, and then the spring bar tool, which is made from mild steel, corrodes or rusts. But this is made from solid 316L grade stainless steel, knurled shank, which is well finished, push pin at one end, and a fine 2-prong fork at the other end, which is the correct size to engage in the standard spring bars used in the end links in the bracelet. So good quality, and because it's stainless steel rather than nickel plated mild steel, it's not going to rust and corrode in time. And lastly, one also gets this stainless steel 1.2mm flathead jeweler screwdriver, which is the correct size for resizing the 1.2mm screw pins used in the bracelet. Again, made from solid 316L grade stainless steel, knurled shank, nice chamfer to the end of it, so no sharp edges, and it's correctly proportioned. And this does suffice in resizing the 1.2mm screw pins in the bracelet. So good to get that included. So good quality presentation in the hard shell travel case, good quality accessories, and good to see a 2-year international warranty at this price point. Now the SN0144 is available in 3 case sizes, 36, 39 and 42 respectively. This is the GL version, which denotes it's the 42mm version of the SN0144 Jian Zhan. So we have a 42mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 49.2mm, a thickness of 10.3mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push micro adjustment clasp. The micro adjustment clasp is glide lock style, and the body is embossed with a San Martin hex emblem to a good standard. Fine grained finish has a beautiful luster to the body, and that complements the longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the flanks. Nice large mirror polished bevel, which marks the transition between the outer body and the flanks, and I like the mirror polishing to it, which is flawless. No sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge. The 4 corners are deburred and chamfered very well, and we don't have a sharp undercut to the flanks, so the quality of the finishing of this glide lock style micro adjustment clasp is excellent. We have a flat sapphire crystal with AR coating on the underside, and the anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and silver mirror polished baton handset. Now this has a gradient dial, and the gradient dial is inspired by the Jian Zhan, which is one of 8 porcelains of the Song dynasty. So the Jian Zhan porcelain has the same gradient finish to it, as you can see. So this really does look like a dial made from porcelain, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. The other thing to note is this is the updated version of the SN0144 gradient dial. Early versions just simply were monochrome, so they just had one colour tone. For example, the dial was orange, but it didn't graduate. So this is a gradient dial. You can see it's darker around the circumference or the chapter ring, and the gradient dial looks more aesthetically pleasing, but it also looks more like Jian Zhan porcelain, one of the 8 porcelains of the Song dynasty. So correctly proportioned applied indices and correctly proportioned baton handset. The legibility is good. The silver mirror polished indices are well finished, as are the baton hands, and they contrast very well with the gradient dial. One detail I like is the mirror polished second hand has a contrasting red tip, and that contrasts very well with the dial and also the white minute ticks on the chapter ring. Because it's a gradient dial, it has a glossy finish to it, and also it looks textured, and the quality of the finishing to the gradient dial is exceptional. I like the silver mirror polished applied hex emblem at 12 o'clock, and I like the dial isn't over branded with unnecessary text or specification. Just bear with me and I'll move the baton minute hand out of the way, and you'll see the text at 6 o'clock better. We simply have 2 lines of text, automatic, and 100 meters equals 330 feet. Just the right amount of information. They haven't over branded the dial with unnecessary text or specification, and I like that it's clean, it's minimalist, and also it's got perfect symmetry. Rather than being an asymmetrical dial with a date complication at 3, which is the default position, they've made the correct decision by citing the date complication at 6 and framing it in silver, because it balances the dial. The dial is symmetrical rather than asymmetrical, and I like that they've managed to fit in an index beneath the framed silver date complication. Now, one detail I really like about this piece, and it's unusual for San Martin pieces, is they have colour coded the date wheel. So the date wheel is orange rather than just using the default option of a white date wheel with black Arabic numerals or a black date wheel with white Arabic numerals, and I like it. The orange date wheel complements the gradient dial, it blends with it, and also I like the white Arabic numerals. They are correctly proportioned, the font is nice and crisp, it's sharp, and the legibility is good. Proportions are good. So dial is very beautiful, and I like the textured finish to it, and also like the porcelain finish to it. It really does look like Jian Zhan porcelain, which it's inspired by. With regards to the bezel, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, concentric CNC lathe tool machine to the top edge bevel of it, and then the edge has a chamfer on it, which is mirror polished to a flawless standard. It's a low profile bezel, and I like it because the flat sapphire crystal has a nice bevel on the edge which catches the light. They've also made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal versus a boxed top hat profile crystal or double dome sapphire crystal, because the benefit of using a flat sapphire crystal is this piece is very thin for an automatic. It's only 10.3 millimeters. One would expect an automatic to be 12 millimeters plus, but this is the kind of thickness one expects with a manual wind or quartz powered piece, but this is an automatic powered by the Miyota caliber 9015, and it still is only 10.3, so they deserve credit for making the correct choice. The head of the piece is finished to perfection. This is one of the best finished head of the pieces of San Martin's that they've ever made. So it's deburred and chamfered on every edge. Doesn't have sharp corners to the tips of the lugs. The undercut to the flanks, which is often an area that San Martin have sharp edges, they've deburred and chamfered it very well. So they've refined the finishing on the SN0144-GL we're looking at. Nice large mirror polished bevel, which marks the transition. It flows the full length of the top edge of the case, and it marks the transition between the brushed satin finished tops of the lugs and the brushed satin finished flanks. I like that the flanks are nice and slender and low profile, and they're not too thick, so it's not a slab-sided piece. It looks very thin and low profile, and visually it does look like a 10.3mm thick piece, even though it has a solid stainless steel case back, which is quite thick because it's forged and pressed with the seal script of San Martin, which I'll show you. So beautiful case. Nice large mirror polished bevel and nice deburred and chamfered undercut, so it's one of the best finished San Martin cases they've ever made. Let's look at the bracelet in detail. So male end links. Now this is the one negative and it's subjective. Some collectors like male end links with this case shape. I think this is the one negative of the piece. They could enhance the fit and also look aesthetically pleasing if they use female pivoted end links, because these male end links are rather large. If you look at the centre of the end link, you can see it has this large rectangle slab of 316L grade stainless steel. If it had a line across it, as per female pivoted end links, it would look more aesthetically pleasing because it would break this large rectangle slab of 316L grade stainless steel. The other thing is, it's a long case. Now, I appreciate this is the largest of the three versions, 36, 39 and 42. This is the 42 version, the GL version of the SN0144. So it's the longest of the three. It's 49.2. But because it's a long case at 49.2, it really would benefit from female pivoted end links, because with the large rectangle in the centre, it does extend the effective end link, the lug to lug of it. So this really is only suitable for collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, I recommend the 36 or the 39 version. But if you have a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you might enjoy the wrist presence of this 42 version, the GL version, with the male end links, because it's a long case. But in terms of articulation, the male end links articulate smoothly. They don't feel stiff or kink, so that's good. They don't have excessive longitudinal, lateral, side to side or up and down play, so articulates freely but doesn't feel stiff or kink. So this is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands of how to get the tolerances, build quality, quality control and finishing to end links correct. The bracelet is finished to perfection. It's one of the best finished San Martin bracelets they have ever made. Beautiful luster to the fine-grained satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks. We've also got mirror polished bevels to the centre links, and the outer links have a nice large mirror polished bevel. Now, the good thing about this is it deletes the sharp edge. Often San Martin bracelets, especially oyster style bracelets, they're known for having sharp crisp edges, which can feel too sharp on the top side and the underside of the flanks. But if you look at this bracelet, you can see there's a large mirror polished bevel on the edge of the outer links. That deletes the sharp edge to the top edge. They've also chamfered the lower edge of the flanks, both on the 6 and the 12 o'clock side. So the benefit of this bracelet is no sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge, as per many San Martin oyster style bracelets. The links in the bracelet articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink, but it's not a sloppy bracelet. The tolerances are nice and tight. The 1.2mm screw pins are good. So good interference fits between the screw pins going through the links. Doesn't rattle, doesn't have excessive longitudinal, lateral, side to side or up and down play, but the links articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, male end links articulate freely, don't have excessive play. Bracelet doesn't rattle, doesn't have too much play, it's not sloppy, but on a positive note, it articulates freely, does feel very smooth. So the refinement is there. This is one of the best San Martin bracelets they have made. Finishing, build quality, quality control, everything about it. No sharp edges, doesn't pull arm hair, articulates well, very comfortable. The other thing I really like about it is, and I'll show you this in the wrist shot, what we're looking at here is correct decision after correct decision, because it's the largest of the three versions, 36, 39 and 42. This is the GL. Now, it's a 42mm. One would expect this to have a 22 to 18 taper or a 20 to 18 taper, but they've made the correct decision. They've used the Perfection Personified 20 to 16 taper. I often refer to it as Perfection Personified. It's the industry standard for good reason. It is the perfect taper, regardless of whether a piece has a 39, 40 or 42mm head of the piece. 20 to 16 visually is very aesthetically pleasing, but the benefit of it having a 20 to 16 taper is it removes the meat from the bracelet. This reduces the heft of the piece. It's a large piece at 42, but the thing that surprises me, and it enhances the comfort level and the feel good factor, is due to the 20 to 16 taper, this is only 147 grams with all the links in the bracelet. So visually it looks good and it also feels good. The comfort level is outstanding. The feel good factor is outstanding, 20 to 16. So let's look at the micro adjustment clasp. 2 button push triggers are brushed satin finished to a good standard. Nice mirror polished chamfers, so no sharp edges. They are correctly proportioned. Nice firm resistance to the spring loaded action. Articulates freely. The interior is solid mil 316L grade stainless steel, longitudinally brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge. Doesn't have sharp corners to the centre section. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excessive play. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't have excessive play in any direction. Right hand hinge pin also articulates freely, doesn't have excessive play in any direction. This is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands of how to get build quality, quality control and finishing and tolerances of a solid milled micro adjustment class correct. Nice tight tolerances, left, centre and right hinge pins are correct. So finishing is good, no sharp edges, doesn't have sharp corners, 3 tight hinge pins. It's the perfect solid milled micro adjustment clasp. So on the underside, it's glide lock style, as you can see. So it's die cast and we have the grooves as per Rolex glide lock, and it does work very well. Snaps open, deploys with a nice positive click, moves up and down freely. Now, it's not as smooth as a Rolex glide lock because the Rolex glide lock has 2 pads and they are Teflon coated, and the Teflon pads of course reduce friction between the 904L oyster steel rubbing against the 904L oyster steel body. This doesn't have Teflon pads in it as per Rolex glide lock, and therefore we do get the friction of the 316L grade stainless steel rubbing against the 316L grade stainless steel die cast body, but it's smooth enough. Clicks in with a nice positive click, deploys with a nice positive click every single time in every one of the click positions. So it works very well. Doesn't have excessive play when it's on its minimum, doesn't rattle, and also when it's on its maximum extension, again, doesn't rattle. Tolerances are good. Build quality, quality control, finishing, tolerances are good. Doesn't accidentally deploy, which is good. You have to really push it in with your index finger and thumb to get it to deploy and get it to snap back in. I like it. It's not as refined and smooth as a Rolex glide lock, but one has to be realistic. This is €282. It's a low tier piece, not a mid tier piece at €500 plus. It's not a high tier piece at €10,000 plus, but it's a very good micro adjustment clasp in the glide lock style. One of my favourites, and definitely one of the best ever San Martin micro adjustment clasp. The thing I like about it above all else, and I'll show you this in the wrist shot, unlike many other clasps, and I'll apply this to San Martin micro adjustment classes, it's not too bulky. This isn't too long, it's not too thick, and it's not too wide. Often micro adjustment clasps, including the ones made by San Martin, are too wide, too thick, and also they sit too tall on the wrist, they project too far. And especially if you are a collector with a smaller wrist size of 6 to 7 inches, often the micro adjustment clasps have too much overhang because the length is too long, and they only suit collectors with a larger wrist size of 7 to 8 inches plus. But this is correctly proportioned. It's very similar in the length, the width and the thickness of a Rolex glide lock clasp, and the benefit of the proportions is that this glide lock style clasp will fit a 6 to 7 inch wrist and also a 7 to 8 inch wrist. It's the perfect proportion glide lock style clasp. Finishing is good, works well, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. So let's look at the case back. Solid forged case back. Now they forged the centre, as you can see, with an embossed seal script in Mandarin. Now the seal script is San Martin seal script, and the inspiration for the San Martin seal script, which is forged into the case back, is the Jian Zhan porcelain, which is one of 8 porcelains of the Song dynasty, as I've detailed. So Jian Zhan porcelain has this kind of seal script on it, and San Martin have then copied that and they've created their own seal script. So what this means in Mandarin characters is San Martin, and they've created their own seal script as per the Jian Zhan porcelain of the Song dynasty. So similar style to Jian Zhan, but it actually means San Martin rather than Jian Zhan, because this isn't a piece of porcelain, it's a watch. So around the circumference is mirror polished and engraved with high definition engraving with the specification of the piece, and the background to the forged seal script has a textured finish to it, which is very aesthetically pleasing, and they've mirror polished the embossed forged seal script to a good standard, so it doesn't feel rough or sharp as per an engraved case back, and that's the benefit of pressing it with a hydraulic press. They forged it rather than engraved it. So very well finished, nice and flat and low profile. It's not a bubble back case back, and the benefit of that is it's 100 meters of hermetic seal, which is strong specification, but it's low profile and flat, so it sits very snug to the wrist, and it also gives good comfort level and feel good factor. The milled slots are deburred and chamfered very well, no sharp edges to the milled slots, and the circumference is CNC concentric lathe tool machined to a good standard. So feels smooth, looks good, very well finished, and I like the seal script, adds interest to it. The male end links are a good snug fit to the head of the piece. Now, standard spring bars, they could enhance this by using quick release spring bars, but however, quality of the finishing to the male end links is good, and the quality of the finishing to the underside to the head of the piece is also good. We've got nice large chamfers machined to the undercuts to the flanks, no sharp edge to the undercuts to the flanks, nice large bevels to the tips of the lugs, which deletes the sharp corners, and it's concentric CNC lathe tool machined to the undercuts to the flanks. So it's a well finished head of the piece, one of their best ever finished cases. No sharp edges, no sharp corners to it whatsoever. So let's test the screw down crown. Solid 316L grade stainless steel screw down crown, coin edge finished, nice large chamfer to it which deletes the sharp tips to the coin edge teeth, and it's embossed with the San Martin hex emblem, mirror polished with a matte bee blasted background to it. So quality of the embossed hex emblem is very good. Let's test the execution. Silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. To put this into perspective, this is every bit as good as a Rolex trip lock crown used on the Submariner date. It's silky smooth like an Omega Seamaster or a Tudor black bay screw down crown. There is no discernible difference in quality, in the smoothness. So perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The machining, tolerances, build quality and quality control are 10 out of 10. They could not improve upon this silky smooth screw down crown. It's perfection personified. So minimal number of turns required to unscrew it. When it's unscrewed, one can manually wind the Miyota caliber 9015 automatic to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. Feels nice and smooth. Absolute pleasure to manually wind the 9015. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 42 hours. Medium resistance to it. Now, it feels lighter than manually winding a Seiko NH35A, which you'll all be familiar with. Feels smoother because the 9000 series of Miyota calibers, such as this 9015, are a premium grade. And one can feel the refinements. The meshing of the gearing feels nice and tight. The smoothness of the mainspring. You can feel the tension building up. So it feels smoother to manually wind than an NH35A. And it feels very smooth like a Solita SW200-1, for example, which you may be familiar with. I really like the refinements of it. It feels very good. So pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. Just bear with me and I'll move the minute hand out of the way. So if you look at the framed date complication at 6, when we're in the first click position, it's now the quick set complication. So rotating the crown clockwise advances the quick set date. Now again, it feels lighter and more refined than an NH35A. I do like the heavy clicks of the indexing of an NH35A quick set date, but I also like the lighter clicks of the 9000 series of Miyota calibers because they feel refined. So it feels very light. Each day of the month clicks over with a good positive click, but feels light, so you've got to be more careful not to wind it too far on the crown. The Arabic numerals have a nice fine font, and I like the orange date wheel, which complements the gradient dial rather than just having the default option of a white date wheel. And the singles and the doubles align correctly. They're in the centre of the silver framed date window, and I like the proportions. The font is good, it's sharp, it's crisp, it's not thick and blurry. Also, the Arabic numerals aren't too high or too low in the date framing, and they're not too far to the left or the right. So they've got the alignment correct, the font's correct, printing is nice and sharp and high definition, it's crisp. So looks very good, also feels very good to set the date, both on the singles and the doubles. So feels very good, I really like it. The 9015 is one of my personal favourite Miyota calibers. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement. Now if you look at the second hand with the contrasting red tip, you can see it's now stopped dead, so it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the Miyota caliber 9015 automatic. Hacking works very well. Now we're now in the time setting position. Feels smooth when you cycle through the 12 hours, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Very low friction movement. Has less resistance than a Seiko NH35A. You can feel the refinement, the gearing meshes very well. And when you rotate the crown, there's an almost immediate response to the baton minute hand. You don't have to take up a lot of slack as per the NH35A, for example, and I like it. It feels really refined, robust, reliable, builds quality, quality control is there. You can feel it. So it feels nice and smooth, light resistance to the gearing, lighter than an NH35A. It's clearly a premium grade of Miyota 9000 series. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial at the characteristic smooth 4 Hz sweep. This is something I really like about this movement. It runs at 4 Hz and 28,800 vibrations per hour. With a Seiko NH35A, for example, that runs at 3 Hz and 21,600 vibrations per hour. The problem with 3 Hz movements is they have a stutter or judder to the second hand, but if you look at this, it's smoother. The sweep is 4 Hz, and I like the smoothness of it. It looks more aesthetically pleasing. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. This is one of the greatest screw down crowns that San Martin have ever made. It's silky smooth. Perfect meshing, perfect pickup between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The tolerances, the build quality are exceptional. This is silky smooth. It's fantastic. So, absolute pleasure to manually wind, hack the movement, set the time, quick set date, everything about it, screws down and unscrews smoothly. Fantastic. Now the other thing I like about it is the proportions. It's large enough to be grippy and tactile. You can get good purchase with your index finger and thumb to unscrew it and screw it back down. Slightly recessed into the right hand flank of the case so it doesn't protrude too far, and it looks good. Visually, the coin edge finishing is good, and the proportions of the crown is good. Large enough but not too large. They've got it correct. What we're looking at is correct decision after correct decision. It's the right size crown for a 42mm version of this piece. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, and the micro adjustment clasp is now on its maximum extension. Now I'm pleased to report I can easily slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and micro adjustment clasp at all times. Therefore that indicates this bracelet with all the links in it will fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist. So even with my 8-inch wrist, when the micro adjustment clasp is on maximum extension, plenty of wrist expansion room. So the micro adjustment clasp gives you 1.5 links of adjustment, which is good, and it's good to have that on the fly adjustment. And now, as I've detailed, the thing I like about this glide lock style clasp is the proportions are very similar to a Rolex glide lock. It's not too wide, not too thick, and not too long. Even if you have a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches. For example, if you choose the 36mm or the 39mm version of this SN0144, this micro adjustment clasp will not be too long and give you overhang with a smaller wrist. It's not too thick, it doesn't protrude, it's not too bulky, and also it wraps around the wrist very well. The profiling is correct. It's one of the greatest San Martin clasps they have ever made. The very best micro adjustment clasp they produce. Proportions are good, finishing is good, aesthetically pleasing. It feels comfortable. Comfort level, feel good factor is there. So, clearly this 42mm version, which is the GL version, is intended for collectors with a larger wrist size of 7 to 8 inches plus. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, as I've detailed, you should opt for the 36mm or the 39mm version respectively. So for example, if you have a 6 to 6.5 inch wrist, the 36 will fit. If you have a 6.5 to 7 inch wrist, I recommend the 39. If you have a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches plus, clearly this 42 will suffice. So wrist presence. Now, although it does have wrist presence, above all else, the thing I really like about this piece, and San Martin deserve credit, they've got this correct. This is not 12mm or 11mm thick, which one would expect with an automatic 42mm. 10.3. Just think about that for a moment. 10.3mm is the kind of thickness one would expect with a manual wind or a quartz powered movement piece. But this is an automatic with a rotor and also a thick stainless steel caseback, which is forged with the seal script. So it does have a thick caseback, but it still is only 10.3. Now, needless to say, you'll know from my previous reviews, the sweet spot is 13mm or below. So at 10.3, this is easily going to slip underneath the shirt cuff. So although it does have wrist presence, it is large at 42, and it does have a long lug to lug of 49.2. this will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff. I like the flat profile to the sapphire crystal. They've made the correct decision by not using a box top pack crystal or a double dome sapphire crystal which is 2mm thick, because that would make this 11 to 12mm plus. 10.3 is fantastic. So it's a low profile piece, sits very flat on the wrist, curves around it very nicely. Now, as I've detailed, the only negative, subjectively, the only thing I would like St. Martin to change is update this with a female pivoted end link version, because the male end link, as you can see, does have that large rectangle slab in the centre, and that does create a gap beneath the tips of the lugs. You can see the end link in the bracelet isn't able to pull beneath the tips of the lugs. It can't pivot as per if it had a female pivoted end link. That would pull the end link in the bracelet more snug to the wrist and refine the comfort level and feel good factor. So I'd like to see a V2 of this SN0144-GL produced with female pivoted end links rather than male, but it's subjective. Some collectors might like it. They like the look of a male end link on this shape of case. Comfort level is 10 out of 10. Feel good factor is 10 out of 10. The other thing I really like about it is, which surprises me, is the lack of heft. 147 grams is fantastic for a 42mm head of the piece. I would expect it with a 39mm version, but not a 42 because it's large. So anything below 150 grams, and I often refer to this in my previous reviews, is the sweet spot, because below 150 grams is comfortable to wear a piece for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So it's 147, and bear in mind that's with all the links in the very long bracelet. It's a very well balanced piece. The bracelet feels balanced, the clasp feels balanced. It doesn't feel like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel sitting on top of the wrist. It curves around it, and it feels very comfortable. The balance is there. The bracelet and clasp perfectly balance the 42mm head of the piece. The only thing they could refine is the long length of the lugs, because 49.2 is 1.2mm slightly too long. 48 is the perfect sweet spot. Again, I often refer to this in my previous reviews. 48 is the perfect lug to lug. It's the sweet spot because it fits collectors regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. At 49.2 it is 1.2 long, but if you have a large wrist of 7 to 8 inches plus, you'll enjoy the length. So this is clearly best suited to collectors with a large wrist. The 36 is good for a 6 to 7 inch, and the 39 version is good for a 7 inch wrist. If you have a 7 to 8 inch plus wrist, clearly this 42 is the best fit, but the long lug to lug is something to bear in mind. 49.2 is long, even for 42. But feel good factor is good. Now, perfection personified taper is the benefit. 20 to 16. They could have made a mistake here and used 22 to 18. That would have had too much meat on it. Wouldn't look so aesthetically pleasing. The other thing was it would increase the heft to over 165 grams, and therefore it would feel too heavy. At 147, this is the benefit of using the perfection personified 20 to 16 industry standard taper, and it's the industry standard for good reason. Looks good, feels good, comfort level is good, reduces the heft down to 147, even for a 42. So, absolutely fantastic taper, and it complements the proportions of the glide lock style clasp. Just a fantastic looking bracelet. I love the luster. I love the 3D effect of it because the centre links are proud. They stick out. So it's just gorgeous. Fantastic looking piece. Feel good factor is good. Comfort level is good. Everything about it. Proportions are fantastic. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So this uses BGW X1. Now I'll explain what that is. It's BGW 9 and they mix in X1 because X1 has a whiter exciter in it, and X1 is very potent. The exciter is extremely potent. It glows very white for a good length of time. So BGW 9 is blue, and you're all familiar with that. X1 is white. By mixing the BGW 9 with X1, it creates a lighter blue than BGW 9. It's called BGW X1. And they've made the correct decision here because it will give the BGW 9 more potency to the exciter, and it's going to perform to stellar performance. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This has actually exceeded my expectations. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the applied indices and 5 to 6 on the baton handset. Good symmetry to the dial, and again, this is the benefit of having a symmetrical dial with a date complication at 6 versus an asymmetrical dial with a date complication at the default position of 3. The dial is balanced. Now, 5 to 6 layers. You can clearly see the benefit of using the X1 mixed in with BGW9 to give it more potency. You can see the exciter in the X1 has more potency than the blue tone exciter in BGW9. It's a lighter blue tone than we get with BGW9. X1 is very potent superluminova. It's the very best. And by mixing BGW9, you still get that aesthetically pleasing blue tone of BGW9, but it's slightly whiter as per X1. And the benefit is it will glow brighter and it will glow for a longer length of time. Now, I'm pleased to see they haven't used any cost-cutting measures. This is a low-tier piece, and often one expects to see Chinese brands using the cost-cutting measure of 3 to 4 layers of superluminova on the applied indices or the baton handset in order to reduce production costs and therefore maximise profit margin per piece. San Martin deserve credit. They don't do that. They don't use production cost-cutting on the Lume. This is 5 to 6 on the indices and 5 to 6 layers on the baton handset. You can clearly see the benefit of the X1 exciter. It's incredibly bright. So although the baton hands and also the applied indices are quite low profile, it's not a dive piece with a dive watch style dial on it, we still do have that stellar performance, and it's incredible. It's not fading whatsoever. This is 10 out of 10 performance. They really could not improve upon this. 5 to 6 layers is optimum. It's the industry standard for good reason. And you can see the baton hands are correctly proportioned. One can clearly differentiate between the shorter baton hour hand and the longer baton minute hand. So one can immediately read the time. You can see which is the hour hand, which is the minute hand, which is good. Symmetry is good. One can clearly orientate the dial and tell where is 12 o'clock and where is the 6 o'clock, because the index below the 6 o'clock date complication is visible. So very good. Stellar performance. The exciter of the X1 gives it added potency, and it's good to see BGW X1 used. It's top quality superluminova. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. You'll know from my previous reviews that the Miyota Calibre 9015 Automatic is one of my personal favourites. It's made in Japan and it's been in service since 2009, so at this stage in 2025 it's well proven beyond question. Not only is it reliable, well-proven workhorse Japanese-made calibre, it has 24 joules, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. As I've explained, the benefit of 4 Hz versus 3 Hz as per an NH35A is the second hand has a nice 4 Hz sweep. It doesn't stutter or judder as per a 3 Hz movement such as the NH35A. Hand winding and hacking work well, as I've demonstrated. The quick set date complication also works well. So 42-hour power reserve is very good, and the stated accuracy of the Calibre 9015 is -10 to +30 seconds per day, so a rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that San Martin are doing a good job of regulating the Calibre 9015s they're using. This one is running consistently at +2 seconds per day when it's fully wound to its maximum 42 hours. +2 is actually chronometer grade accuracy. It's very accurate. Chronometer grade is -4 to +6. So +2 is well within the -10 to +30 stated accuracy. It's chronometer accurate, so no negatives to the 9015 whatsoever. Build quality, quality control, materials, finishing, reliability are fantastic. And it works very well with this silky smooth crown. Feels pleasant to manually wind, hacking works well, quick set complication works well, feels good to set the time. It's one of my personal favourite premium 9000 grade Miyota calibers. The 9015 is one of the greatest 9000 series calibers they have ever made. In use since 2009, the reliability is incredible. +2 seconds per day, it's fantastic. So, correct choice at this price point of €282. Now, I want to give credit to San Martin here. For example, they could have used the cost-cutting measure and just simply used the NH35A, which is significantly less expensive. But they didn't. They didn't take the less expensive option. They opted for a premium 9000 grade Miyota caliber, the 9015. It's a very good movement. So €282, the 9015 is the correct choice. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So, low tier piece, price point is $305, which is €282. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality, and yes, it is unquestionably excellent value at €282. This is one of the greatest San Martin watches they have ever made. The build quality, quality control, finishing are stellar. Quality of finishing to the head of the piece is exceptional. They've corrected the problems that they often have. There's no sharp edge to the undercuts of the flanks, which is common with St. Martin pieces. They've also corrected the bracelet finishing because large bevels and chamfers means there's no sharp edges. Often St. Martin oyster style bracelets have sharp edges. This does not have it. This micro adjustment clasp is stellar. It's one of the greatest clasps they've ever made. Finished to perfection, glide lock style mechanism works well, finishing, tolerances, everything about it is stellar. There's only one negative, and this is subjective. One detail I would like to change. The male end links, I think the feel good factor, comfort level, it would look better if it had female pitted end links, but this is subjective. Some collectors prefer male end links. This is the one thing I would like to change about the piece, a V2 with female pitted end links. But other than that, it's the perfect daily wear piece. The orange dial, which is gradient as per Jian Zhan porcelain from the Song dynasty, is absolutely gorgeous. The feel-good factor of this piece is fantastic, the comfort level is fantastic, and it's also good they've offered it in 3 different sizes, 36, 39 and 42 respectively, to fit collectors with a 6-inch, 7-inch and 8-inch wrist respectively. Perfect daily wear piece, one of the greatest St. Martins ever made. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the St. Martin SN0144-GL Jian Zhan. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.